Dave, just start off sharing a little bit about yourself. You're building quite a bit here, but obviously it took you quite a bit to get here. So curious about looking back in the past, and then we can talk about present and future as we move forward.
So where should we begin?
Let's begin with, why do you do what you do?
I think today, like the reason's always evolving. So two underlying motivations. So one is I already have everything. So if you believe in the Maslow hierarchy of needs model, then I only operate from the top of the pyramid, which is the self-actualization thing, right? So I don't need anything else. I already have everything. So now it's about me proving to the world something, or mainly proving to myself. The world doesn't give a shit. So we have, the way I see it is we have multiple Olympic games, if you will, happening at the same time. And we can each choose which game we are playing, I can be the most eco-conscious person in the world, and that's the Olympic Games I'm playing. Or you choose the game you want to be part of. Obviously, you can choose no games at all. So I have chosen to play the game of capitalism, and so I'm trying to win at capitalism. And it's kind of like if all these people all around the world are playing this game, and so am I as capable as the best of them, or am I worse? And so kind of trying to prove myself that I can do it. I can win at this game. I can get maybe not the gold medal, because Bezos has the gold medal. Like I can have a result that I'm proud of. So that's one. So just me racing against the world. And two is more of this protector provider type of thing. So I have a family. I have two kids. Taking care of them, setting them up for success, taking care of my own retirement as well. So that aspect as well.
Well, and this is a good time to welcome Nick back to the podcast after a couple weeks hiatus. He gave birth to his second child. Well, his wife did, but welcome.
All right, congrats.
Welcome, Nick. Welcome back, Nick.
Yeah, I didn't do nearly as much work, but I was definitely there. Definitely there. Thank you for sharing that as you did, because that's definitely something that comes up for me. Like I've got a 2-week-old and a 4-year-old, two daughters, and that balance you just shared is really well articulated for me. Thank you. Of what's the best version of me that I can speculate myself to the world, but really just to prove to myself to continue to create and become the best version of that, but also at the same time allow the legacy of me to continue through providing that for my children, providing that for later on in my life, and creating that version of it. And I think so I can just do more of number one. And like that, the more that that's done, back to the hierarchy of needs, the more that that's taken care of, the more free the creativity reigns for the first version of the best version of how I can play that game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Peep, about the capitalism, because when I first became a coach, that was the biggest hurdle I overcame. Was I wanted to align with meaningful work, right? And capitalism, there's a couple different views of capitalism, but I happen to think very, very positively of it, because capitalism means everybody wins in my definition of it. So it's interesting to hear you frame it like it's a race, or like you're competing, but in a sense, your businesses that you're creating, have to work. Sure, there's competitors, right? But there's also a sentiment of working together, or identifying the proper way, or the most valuable way to produce in a particular industry. Do you find that to be true?
Well, for sure, you need to, in order to grow your business and grab market share, you need to add value. So what you do actually needs to be useful and wanted. There's no way around it. And when I phrase it as like competition, it's more like me, only have this one life, or like as far as I know. And so one shot at this experience on this planet Earth, and just want to feel what it's like to build a successful company, and one and multiple, and also all these people. Like in my course of my career, I have met many very successful people. A lot of them actually not particularly smart, and so that's been very motivating for me. So this douchebag can do this. I should be able to do this. It's like an enabler. And so in a way, it is competition. Like, am I worse? So these guys are all like, have achieved this. Can I not have this too? So obviously, that competition only happens in my mind. It's not like a real thing.
Yeah, I'm curious. So what is that? What does it take to operate at that level? And then maybe another question to piggyback that is, what do you have to be extra aware of when you want to achieve that level or that status?
Well, I'm. It's not like I actively think about this stuff all the time. Mainly, I'm focused on task at hand. Like building my businesses, and then focused on that side of stuff. Like, am I working on the right things? Am I, like business strategy? So that's mainly what I'm focused on. So it's less about the competition. That's kind of like in the back of my mind somewhere. But actively, I'm actually thinking about tangible things like what do I include in my next product release, and like what is the strategy that I'm pursuing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you think of that, Coach? Because a lot of what we encounter is making sure that's aligned, right? We want the work to be purposeful, and part of that comes from identifying the reasoning behind it. That's why I asked the first question is, why? Because I think that answers a lot about where we're going too. Do you find that to be true, Coach?
Yeah, I'm really pondering this because I love the competition thought process here, because I think about the milestones and the outcomes in the same kind of vein. It's helpful to know that we have an outcome, because if we don't have something to aim for, we're not going to know that when we've got there. And if we're not tracking milestones along the way, then we can't track and see progress and feel good about that. At the same time, they're not the reasons why we do things. The reasons why we do things is the journey itself. So I get the same thing for me. Is like, I think that's what you're saying, Pep. It's like, okay, I'm aware of it. I use it to drive and track and take some place of comparison, even though it's not an active thing. I do it enough just so I can come back to focus on what's real around the business strategy and at the next action I take. Does that resonate with you, Pep, in the same way?
Basically, yes. Yeah.
Well, so I'm curious, and I'm sure you get asked this, but in my research, the number one most influential conversion rate optimization expert in the world is who? That's you?
Well, it used to be me. I'm not an active practitioner anymore.
Okay. So, and how did you earn that?
By putting myself out there and busting my ass. So, if you're, my consulting company, now called Spiro, when I launched it, my strategy from the get-go was like understand what understand what business you're in, and if you're in consulting, you're in the business of expertise. If you're in the business of expertise, you need to do things. Well, you need to do many things, but some of the very key ingredients are that you need to position yourself as a person to be the number one expert, because when people hire agencies, consulting companies, they hire names, people. Obviously, if you have a huge brand like it's like PwC or McKinsey, that's a different thing. But like most of us don't have such a huge established brand name, so you go after who is the best at this thing. So and it's much easier to brand a person than a company, and so I made it my goal to make a name for myself. And so, how do you position yourself as the world's greatest expert? You tell people, and not that, hey, I'm the shit, but by demonstrating expertise. So I was blogging like my life depended on it. I was speaking at every conference that would have me. I would present at every webinar that would have me. be a guest at every podcast, things like that. So just constantly putting myself out there year over year, actively pursuing that, and obviously working on your actual expertise too. You can't be just a talker. So actually doing the work, being in the weeds, constantly trying to get better.
And can I tie that back to that question around like noticing the other people that have been successful that aren't that smart and going, okay, I can do this as well. And if it wasn't about that, what are the things or the principles that you pulled out that need to be enacted in order to get success?
Can you phrase that in another way?
Yeah, absolutely. The observation that you shared was that the people that you saw that were successful weren't really that smart. So that wasn't the common denominator. What has been? What do you see as the attributes of successful people? If it's not that they're smart.
Well, yeah, I think being highly intelligent helps, but it's not a prerequisite. I think when observing all the people that I know, they're just ambitious and fearless. I mean, probably not fearless, but ready to do it anyway. So being extremely proactive, so taking responsibility and just keeping at it. So persistence, grit, if you will, and being ambitious, like taking up bigger and bigger goals. Like, yeah, I can do that. Being confident, self-confidence is huge. I think those as success principles really work. Like that arrogant asshole who drives a Ferrari, like that confidence has played a major role, where to get that person where he is or she is.
It's almost like that might not necessarily, that won't keep them there, that arrogance. Like it maybe came from their success, but that's maybe not why they arrived to where they were. And some of the
Right, it might also take them down. Like that's the WeWork founder story, right? The crazy madman, right? Like if you read that story, he thought he's like godlike genius, and probably that inner confidence brought him to where he is, and that, but also brought on the demise of WeWork. Of course, he still made it out like fucking rich, so he did good.
Yeah.
This back to the principles of why you do what you do, and to think about the capitalism part, the money part of it, right? There's very many different polarizing views about why money is important. Is money important? What does it mean? It's for me, it's interesting to see all those different things. I think about it like it's not everything, but it's certainly part of the equation, and the equation you can generalize about what should be as part of that equation, but it's going to be different for everyone, right? You can model success and use those principles of ambition and persistence and confidence, self-confidence, maybe bordering on arrogance to get some of that success and utilize those things that people have done before. But the continual fulfillment, that version of it, which actually brings you peace, where you can look back and go, that was great. It still continues to be great. And I know I made a difference. Like that balance together, I believe, is important to think about, right? Like, what's your thought about that in terms of how people should think about money in that equation?
Well, I like to always say that the more you eat, the hungrier you get.
Yeah.
Like if you 10 years ago, I was dreaming of the success I have today in terms of like the money I'm making. Today, I think what I make is nothing,
Yeah.
So, I mean, not nothing, but like I'm I'm well off. So to an extent, I think like your satisfaction about life and peace, it cannot come from external things. It needs to come from inside you. Like otherwise, like it's never enough. Always need more houses and more billions and more Bentleys. Whatever it is. So the hunger, in the end, the peace needs to come from the inside. And I mean, there is a practical level of wealth. Like taking care of everybody. And be sure that your offspring doesn't go hungry, or they can get good education and all that stuff, and like basic comfort. I can travel and things like that. like I don't need palaces in every country. I don't need a Bezos style, $60 billion or whatever. Like that's crazy town, right? Like, what do you do with that kind of wealth? I don't know. Like, you start saving the world, I guess. Um, so I don't have a specific dollar amount in mind. I actually maybe I have like certain milestones where I'm thought like if I achieve this, like if I build $100 million company, I will be proud of myself. Kind of like this, and then I can retire and write a children's novel.
I'd love to hear how this ties into what you're currently building, Pape, because you have a lot going on right now, right? So if you wouldn't mind, tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, I have three businesses. I have an agency, consulting company, that is doing customer experience, conversion optimization consulting, mid to large enterprises. There, I am currently mainly serving just as a board member. I'm the founder, and I took it to a place and then handed it over to a capable team. And then I have a e-learning company, CXL, which I started in 2016. So there, I'm still the CEO. I have a very strong management team as well, who are taking care of a lot of the day to day. So at CXL, my involvement is not very tactical for the most part. Sometimes it's more strategic, direction setting, vision, uh, setting the standard for how ambitious we are, keeping my management team accountable, things like that. And then there's Winter, a SaaS company that is a fairly new company, launched in May 2020. And here I am also the CEO, but here I'm very tactical, very very hands-on. This is early stage, small team. I'm doing little small things like I'm typing up the newsletter and doing less customer support and sales calls. I'm doing a lot, very hands-on. But here with the SaaS company, each company that I've built has been more sophisticated and I think smarter than the previous one. So consulting company is the easiest to start because all you need to start a consulting business is you need to know something. Mm-hmm. That's it. No capital needed, just a laptop, and you need to be good at something. But it doesn't scale, right? It never scales because it's very human heavy. Because whatever your pricing model, you still trading hours for time.
Yeah.
The e-learning company is already a smarter business because it's very scalable. It has its another set of issues where the time to value. So how soon is it that people get success from the product? So it's like they take a course, and it takes our courses are very extensive. So anywhere to 8 to 100 hours of content. So you need to make time to go through the content, then implement, then get results. There's a huge lag time, and most will fall off before they see results. So I'm relying on other people to do the learning and implementation to see results. And it's challenging in that sense. The company is great and growing year over year. And then my SaaS company, Winter, the time to value is very fast, So that's what I love about it.
How scalable?
So basically, I think this SaaS company, while it's the smallest right now, it will be by far the biggest.
That's what I was going to ask. Is how scalable is Winter?
It's infinitely scalable.
Yeah.
So it's also, there are many business things that I've done right there. I mean, it's completely unique. It's innovative. It solves a massive unsolved problem. Like there are all the things that are kind of like missing from these other companies. The Winter checks all these boxes. So as you get older, hopefully you get also wiser. You learn from experience. I am an extremely proactive person. I'm the classic starter. There's a problem. Let's fucking fix it right now. Let's go. It drives my wife nuts because she's like this. Think carefully and make a plan, and then like think. Let's discuss. And I'm like, right now. And of course, by going right now, you make mistakes, meaning it's not completely thought out and all that stuff. But there's another success principle, which is speed. there's massive, massive underappreciated advantage in moving fast. 80-20 fucking everything, almost everything, you know. So it doesn't, you don't need to know, you don't need to have a perfect plan almost ever. Just go and build as fast as possible. And this is true in business. This is true in like human interaction, like years of doing kickboxing has taught me. It's like you can completely overwhelm the opponent with speed. You go at the guy so fast, like they don't know what's coming. If you're not trained in this stuff to be comfortable, like noobs, they will be shocked and you'll just own them in a second. So it's the same type of mindset in business. You just super ambitious, move super fast, just, you know, that gives you success.
Coach, I know that lit you up over there with the kickboxing, right? That hit home for you.
Yeah, I practiced Muay Thai for many years. I absolutely right. Like it's you can just overwhelm people. It's like you don't just move straight in and just go for what you need to go to. And I believe it's so much of iteration, anything. Like any way you want to do, you can get most of what you want. 80-20, as you said, everything. Like there's so much power in that, and just being okay with that's the right thing for right now, and whatever happens along the way, we'll pick it up as we need to. And like there's we in coaching we talk a lot about like the balance of where people are and what people's thought patterns are. And we believe that there's three primary things we think about, and that's number one, people; number two, action and innovation; and number three, structure and process. And it sounds like that you're all about the innovation and action, and perhaps your wife is more about the structure and process, right? But we all need all these things, and being aware as we can of what we need in what moment, and pulling on the levers. So right now, it's all about action innovation. That's my default. That's what I like to be. And by the way, I'm the same. It's just to go do that. And then that will give us most of what we need. Then we'll have more information. If we then need to step back, maybe I'm going to hand that off to someone else who prefers to do that stuff. And then let me know when it's time for action again, because I'll be pushing you to do that anyway. And just having that awareness across the team, and just as you for yourself, we find it so super powerful. You know, like to be able to have that construct and that awareness.
Speed compounds. Like you do one thing fast, you do everything fast, and then you just move faster. And also, in the same way, slowness compounds. If you do one thing slow, you do another thing slow, and then everything is delayed, and you just make much less progress. And I really love this quote by the race driver Mario Andretti that if things feel under control, you're not going fast enough. You know, like. Every time I'm like, oh, this is comfortable coasting. Oh shit, that means I'm not ambitious enough. Cruising.
For sure, because and then I believe what happens then, because when we get into that comfort, this slow fog comes over us. And as someone that's always driving forward, maybe you haven't felt this so much, but I see a lot of people in this place where they're comfortable and then they don't get that reminder. They haven't got that Andretti quote there, and this slow fog comes over, and then you don't really see it, and then you're in the fog. And once you're in the fog, that's all you can see. It's a nice comfort blanket, and I'm just in this place. Everything's good, and that's a dangerous place to be, because it takes a lot to shake you out of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting about decision making as well, because like why people are afraid of making decisions fast and moving fast is like, what if I make a mistake, right? What if it's the wrong decision? So that's why they want to plan and discuss and measure and whatever. And I stumbled upon this interesting study on decision making. So people were keeping decision logs. It's like, I made this decision, on Tuesday, and this decision, and so they're keeping this log on every small and big decision they made. And then 3, 6, and 12 months later, they look back at their decision and they ask themselves, was this the right call or not? And across all these people part of the study, like 90% of the decisions they made, or more than like almost all of them, 97% of decisions were the correct decisions. So that's not to say that everybody is making right calls. Right. It's just that whatever you decide retroactively feels like the right call. So hence, there is no really downside in moving fast and deciding. Decision making is progress. And like you meet these guys who like wasted their youth doing drugs and by lying in the ditch for 20 years, and then you talk to them, it's like, yeah, man, I regret nothing. Like I learned all these things. Like we don't regret our decisions for the most part.
Right, so just dive into them. I love that. Yeah, one thing I say, the most important thing about decisions is making them.
Yeah,
It's not about which one you make; it's about making them. Because if you perceive it to be the wrong one, then you'll find out quicker, and then you can make
exactly.
another
And there's
decision.
Jeff Bezos has this amazing 2x2 matrix about making decisions, or the speed of decision making, which is one axis is irreversibility. How reversible is this decision?
Yeah.
And consequentiality. So how impactful it is. So unless it is highly irreversible and highly consequential, in which case you should decide slowly. In every other case, you should decide fast. You know.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and we work with that all the time, coach, right? With making decisions just gives us more information to make other decisions. There's no bad decisions. Even looking back on them, if you decide it's the wrong decision, it still gave you information for the right decision to move forward. So
yeah, very, very, it's rare that we make a decision that is not reversible. I mean, it can happen,
Right.
but it's rare.
So I'm wondering, Pape, you mentioned, experience is huge. And, I see the evolution in your companies with scalability and value and speed. And I'm wondering, like, could you have created Winter 5 years ago would be the first question. And then the next question is what's next? What's after Winter? What's the speed of the speed, if you will?
Well, I will never know. I mean, I can say that, oh, yeah, well, now I know all these things, and so I'm a better business person now. And that might be true, but also maybe I would have just learned faster had I studied faster. I would never find out. Because you look at, so many founders that started a huge global company when they were really young, and I'm not just talking about Mark Zuckerberg and so on, but like, look at the Stripe founders, right? Super young. I think they were like under 20 when they started it, like one of the youngest billionaires in the world. So, of course, I'm sure they're really fucking smart kids, But also, nobody trained them to be a CEO of a global company, right? They learned on the job. They had extreme speed, and that forced them to learn. So I think we can all learn much faster if we're put in a situation where we have to.
Love that. And so what's next? What's after Winter? Maybe that's difficult to answer, but I'm sure you got something.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I thought I'm gonna start a company. So it was like after running my agency for 6 years, I started the second company. After running that for 4 years, I started Winter. And it's like, okay, so takes me, less time each time to start a new one. Maybe I should also start a next one right away. And so actually, I started building another company at the same time as Winter. But it's like there's a limited mind space that you have. So as a founder, like when I'm also the founder of these businesses, I don't think it's doable really, because you just they need enough attention. As an investor, that's different, right? Like a hire a management team and pump money, and that's a different game. But as a founder, I think there's a natural limit to how many things you can do well at the same time. So right now, I'm focused on building Winter, which is completely innovative and disruptive in many cases. Like there are three really radical things going for us. Like, I'm building the world's biggest and the best B2B panels. It's like big ass mission there, huge market opportunity. Second, most companies when we're competing, we're competing actually on brand and messaging, not on features, because it's not possible to win the war on features. Because whatever you do, your competitors will copy you. If you're an agency, whatever services you offer, others can also offer these services. So it's very difficult to be objectively better. So you compete on messaging. However, there's no data on whether your messaging is working or not. And that is the problem we're solving, which is a huge problem. Nobody else is doing that. And third, we're going to now dramatically innovate on how market research is done. So another third big, huge thing going for us. So as I said, this Winter is going to be the biggest company I've had. It's going to be a fucking rocket ship. I can feel it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so cool. Can I pull this back to what we started talking about energy at the start as we were kind of coming in here, and I can see that some of this stuff in you right now. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that energy management, like emotional cues, why we do the things that we do. What would you say that gives you your drive? What keeps you up late, gets you up early, pulls you through?
I mean, I'm just really enjoying the process. This is my passion. I
Right.
I I I, l- I live and breathe this stuff. Like I'm so interested in it. I'm like I can't get enough. If I wouldn't have my family, I'd be doing this all night long. You know, like 24/7. Like, right now I'm actually very organized. I'm only work 8 hours a day, and then I go and hang out with my kids and wife. So there's a family sets limits. I think which is also healthy because otherwise you would actually probably burn out. But I just love this thing. Like every day at the office, I'm in the zone. Like I'm never procrastinated because I love everything I do, except anything that to do with taxes and finances and so. But you can hire people for that, you know.
Well, that's the structure part again. So we know that that's not you. You're in the zone. You're going to be the action and innovation for sure. Let me dive into that a little bit, if may, because like there's certainly something to be said about being there all the time, like live and breathe the stuff. You'd be in the office all the time if it wasn't for the family. And you said that that limits you, creates some organization. Do you find that there's more leverage there versus the effort? Because I think this is a lot of people that people do is okay, I need to put all the time in to do something to be successful. No doubt that that is the case, right? The more you put in, sometimes that you're going to get more out. But is there a limit to that? Is there something that you found that having a family balance that actually you're more
Yeah,
productive in
well,
some ways?
for sure, since I have always the urgency of like I only have certain amount of hours a day,
Yeah.
I need to make sure that I'm working on the right things. So and also create systems where things are moving along even if I'm not able to do it myself. So there's this book that I'm sure you guys know, this Who Not How, that completely changed my mindset of like when I need to get something done, I don't ask how can I get it done. I ask who can
Yeah.
help me get it done or who can do this for me, and that has unlocked how I scale myself basically. So I think I work 8 hours a day. I think I could get more done if I work 10, 12 hours a day. But there's definitely a hard limit somewhere. Like I had a co-founder who, you know, not not married, no kids, no nothing. So just like work was his life,
Mm.
and he was constantly burning out. So it's like
Yeah.
pulling all nighters for 6 months in a row, and then he needed like a 2 month break to recover. Like didn't have any juice in him. So I've witnessed firsthand what it does if you don't have a channel to something else going on in your life. I think like exercise, of course, is also huge, and then you need relationships, and go out for a beer with friends, regularly. You need it.
Mm. Balance in all things is key, right? The yin and the
Mm.
yang, for sure. Hmm. Pape, anything around exercise or diet, or how much of your energy balance is focused on that?
It's become increasingly huge over the last 5 years or so. So I mean, I used to be, like in when you're in your 20s and feeling invincible, you can eat like shit and drink all you want. I mean, alcohol, and then your body can handle it. But then when you get into your mid 30s and you eat and drink the same way as you used to when you were younger, you get fat and weak. And so like, oh, that's not sustainable. And so when I was like 35, 36, I found myself very overweight, hadn't exercised in a decade, in a really bad place. And then something happened also in my life where it was like a wake up call. And then I completely transformed my diet, my exercise, got into kickboxing, weightlifting. And so I went from I'm the chubby guy in whatever group I'm hanging out with to being the fittest guy in whatever circle I'm in.
Wow. I'm wondering if you grew up with like a bunch of siblings. Like, where does this competition bone come from?
I mean, I do have a brother, but it was never a competition really with him.
Hmm.
I know it's like weird. Like my father was alcoholic and didn't even work, and my mother was just a doctor, and so like there was nothing entrepreneurial going on in my life. Like I had no
Hmm.
access to entrepreneurs growing up. So how I became so proactive and entrepreneurial is a mystery to me. I've thought about it a lot. Like, what about me, my upbringing, or genes? Like, there's nothing. It's just a fucking fluke. Maybe I was bored as a kid a lot. Maybe that did it. Because there's a lot of evidence that shows that boredom is like fueling your creativity and all that stuff. So now whenever my kids complain, Daddy, I'm bored. I'm like, good.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Go ahead, coach.
I just love this line of thinking because if I pull it back to like some ways that we're born, what we're born with, what does our genes say, what does our DNA say overall, like what do our parents do, and when we're growing up, I think all of that stuff is relevant to an extent, and talent as well, but also that we can't really measure it, and we can't really understand it. Kind of like the question about, well, if I started it earlier, what would have been different? Well, we don't know. So on the one
Sure.
hand, it's interesting to explore it. On the other hand, it doesn't matter. So let's just throw it away. So I think about it like if I let's take kickboxing as an example because that's just on my mind as we were talking about a little bit. If you, whatever your baseline is, if you start kickboxing when you're 5 or 6 years old and you do kickboxing for an hour a day, 5 days a week, and you do that over a consistent period of 10 years' time, by the time you're 15, you're going to be really damn good at kickboxing,
Yeah,
regardless of whatever else was before that or goes after it.
totally.
You started that pattern, and so I think a lot of people wherever they go is just if it's without intention, it's just whatever starts them, but whatever path they go down, they continue to go down.
Yeah,
And you do something
absolutely. Yeah.
once, and you get a feedback loop. And if you like some of that, you do it again, and you do it again, and then somewhere down the line, someone says, "Wow, you're good at that. Where did that talent come from?" And you hear that, especially as children, we hear that and we take that in and go, "Oh, I must be good at that." And then we start to think that we're good at that and assume we're good at that, and we do it more. Then we've got to get even better, and it's self-fulfilling. So for me, it's more along the line of just choose what it is you want to like. What's some of the things that there's a little spark inside of you to go down, and then start to explore that. And so thank you very much for sharing it because that really kind of resonated through that for me. What you shared, it's like something someday that you just thought, okay, the boredom is just allows me to be creative, and then somehow that got my bet is that got reinforced and it just started being more and more and just created into this like fire of passion that you have now, right? You love it,
Yeah.
do it, live and breathe it. Came from a place of developing it.
Yeah. I was early on. I was optimizing for whatever the social circle around me was optim. So in my high school, like I grew up with a bunch of drinking youngsters. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna drink the most, and I'll be the coolest guy, and so I did. And so I was like the president of my own little drinking club, getting wasted. And then in college, I joined like a student organization where the the kids there, they were optimizing for changing the world, making the world a better place. Like they were like about learning and being change agents, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I started, stuck with this group, and then I noticed how what you need to do in that environment to be like successful and rise through the ranks. I mean, I ended up being my local chapter president. I was a national vice president, and so on. So I was optimizing for whatever that group is optimizing for, and that has really carried me. Whatever is like, okay, so now I'm gonna be a conversion expert. So what are we doing here, guys? How does the game work? Ah, okay. So expert, write books, blogs. I can outblog you guys. Let's go.
Action, speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I think you nailed it, Nick. Because out of our negative situations come the good ones, right? And I think out of the space of boredom comes creativity. It's a principle like all the way around. So I think that's very astute there. So yeah, Pape, I'd love to know what you're taking away from this conversation, and or what would be, just considering where you've come from and what you've accomplished and where you're going, what maybe some others can take away from this conversation.
persistence and keeping at it. You know, it's no, if you're chasing, you know, like the silver bullets and like this one hack that will change me. Like if I only know this one trick, like there is no one fucking trick. I mean, just like there are some principles, like move fast and be fearless if you can, and learn and take risks. You know?
Yeah. How about this? What would you have told yourself 10 years ago?
Be more ambitious. Be more ambitious. My initial goals that I set for myself were low. You know, so I think I would have advanced much sooner if I had had like an older mentor. Somebody tells me like, no, aim higher. You know.
Mm. Yeah, sometimes we're victims of our own limitations. We sell ourselves short to what we can accomplish. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you learn what you're capable of just over time, it takes a long time, you know. So learning through trial and error takes too fucking long, and it's too costly. So having some learned through others' experiences, you know, through books and stuff as well, but having, you know, like a mentor or a coach really can, you know, propel you. Somebody who's, you know, who's been there and done that, and say, hey man, you can do way more. You know,
Mm.
that's a message that I think younger people need to hear.
Mm. Appreciate that. What a great plug for us. Thank you, Pape. Nick, how about you?
Well, I just wanted to explore that for a second. If I go down that road, Pape, if you don't mind, why do you think that we initially set our goals low?
Well, I think it's the Roger Bannister effect. Like you don't know what's possible, you know. And if you once you achieve something, then you start believing, oh, it is possible, you know. So somehow exposure, you know, to what's possible and believing that you too can be whoever, you know. Need to work on that.
Yeah. I ask because of that reason. That's definitely what I see as well. You know, it's people. I'll often do some exercises around asking people to create the future that they want. Like, just, hey, we've all done this type of exercise. Just throw it out a few years, paint the picture. It's like, what would it be? Like, what's the best version of it for you? And some people can do it because they practice. And back to the decision making, right? Part of that is just building the muscle. If you don't make many decisions, it's not likely that you're good at it. There's no muscle there. Like, you can't go into a kickboxing session and be able to throw like 10 minutes of jab crosses, you know, like if you haven't done it before, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's practice, and same for like building the decision muscle. It's part of that. And so same thing with setting goals, casting a vision. If you haven't done it before, it's not likely it's going to be there. And the first version of it tends to be something that's just a little bit better than we are now. It's amazing how much we underestimate what we can achieve over the longer term, because we base it on what we think we can get immediately. But you want to extrapolate that out and use the principles of compounding. But I love what you said earlier about persistence, keeping at it again, and chasing the silver bullet. For me, it screams at me. It's like, hey, there's not a silver bullet, but if there was a silver bullet, the silver bullet would be that there isn't one. Stop looking for it. But there's not one, so don't. Right? So it's that like mentality. It's just take everything else out and just do what's in front of you, and do it in a place where you can get excited about it, and use that some inherent excitement about what you are doing. But because there will be times when it's difficult, there will be times where things don't go your way. It's like, if you've got that inherent belief and fire in you, that passionate about what you're doing, you'll get through it. So it's just about making sure that your ladder's against the right wall. You'll keep going up. And so that's one of the things I'm taking away there, Coach.
Any response to that, Pape? I know you saw you thinking there.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you said. And there's, in terms of like achieving, let's say, business success, there is a thing that you might be working on the wrong thing, you know, like, when I realized like the limitations of my agency, like if I want to get to a certain financial success, like, okay, this is not the vehicle that will take me there. Like, I think don't be afraid to either abandon ship or start a new ship. Like, if you have something that's working, get somebody to manage it, you know, and then you start up a new thing.
Yeah.
A lot of when we see with successful startup founders, you know, they have built one great company, become famous, like massive exit, you know, and then with all the context they have and all the money they have, they're gonna start the next venture and it doesn't fucking work. You know, they're doing the wrong thing. So there is, you know, there's some luck involved there. So it just goes to show that if you achieved luck or a success with one thing, doesn't mean the next thing will also work. The same thing, if this thing that you're working on hasn't fucking worked, just do something else. You know, it just might be the wrong timing, wrong idea, whatever it is. You know, there's countless examples of how successful people, all these other things that they did before that failed, you know, being them, you know, like the Harry Potter author, or, you know, all these other people, like million stories about that. So working on the right things, like I have somebody in my somebody close to me that I know, and how he's a smart guy, and, you know, like reading and developing, and like just his business is not going anywhere. But it's like sunk cost fallacy. He's been doing it for 15 years. He's like, it's hard to give up, and it's not like a zombie company. It's working, but it's not going anywhere. So I've been trying to tell him, like, just leave this, do something else. But it's like, no, and that's limiting.
Yeah, it's that middle of the road part, that comfort zone again, right? It's like I can't leave it because it kind of works. It's not too painful that it's easy to give away. Yeah. It kind of works. And that last point that you shared before that around like just jump out, like you see it's not working, maybe it's just not the right idea. That's so important as well, especially for people to look at that and go, oh, that didn't work, it must be me. It's not, right? Like it's just that idea, like it just might be a timing thing, like you said, it could that
exactly.
idea.
So I had a SaaS company 2009. I started it, killed it 2011, poured my heart and soul in it. Like I tried so hard and nothing worked. I mean, the minimal success was like basically I had to kill the company. I started my next company. I had instant success, and success was easy because just that what I was doing worked. Like it was a better idea.
Right. It brings us back to decision making is progress. Just yes. Deciding, because then you figure out more of the right things, even if it's the wrong decision. So, and Coach, I love where yours ended up here, because over my shoulder, this one is my vision board. You know, I have things on there that I want to accomplish in the future that just seem so crazy to me, but I'm putting that principle into practice with like, I'm not going to set my own limitations. Whatever I want to have, which would be great to have, time on that scale is such a long period of time. I'll figure it out along the way. I just want to have it, and I want to attach myself to it, and I'll figure it out as I go. A lot of decisions in that process, and speed.
Yeah.
Love it. Any last contributions, gentlemen? This has been really interesting. Appreciate you both here.
Persist.
Keep going. Decide with some speed, and then keep going. That's the formula. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Only time we fail was when we give up. That's it.
Love it. Hey, thank you for joining us. It's been a really interesting and intriguing conversation. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.